Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tapfiliate Podcast. And I'm Alena, and today we're going to dive deep into the world of WordPress. And trust me, it won't be just your basic blog talk, because today we're talking about security, monetization strategies, and my today's guest is Roger Williams, community manager at Kinsta. This is world's famous hosting provider and hosting platform and management platform. And Roger, thank you for joining us today. Welcome on board, and maybe you can share some more details about yourself, about your company, and what you're all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Alena, for the excellent introduction there. So, as you said, my name is Roger. I'm the community manager here at Kinsta. And so Kinsta is a managed hosting provider focusing on WordPress websites. So we've been around for 12 years now, and we have built our entire platform on top of the Google Cloud platform. So we're able to be in over 37 data centers around the world. So no matter where you are on the globe, we have a data center for you to fit either, your local needs, or if there's any regulatory compliance needs, you can choose a data center that fits into what you need it to be located at. On top of that, we've built every single site at Kinsta is built in its own isolated Linux container. And so this allows us to make sure that there are dedicated resources for each of those sites. As you may know, and some of your listeners may know, WordPress can be quite intensive when it comes to processing and database needs. And so we've solved that issue by using Linux containers and really making sure that you've got all of the RAM and all of the processors necessary to run WordPress's PHP functions, database calls, and really make sure that the sites are running very quickly. On top of all of that, we've put everything behind Cloudflare Enterprise. And so when you sign up and you load your site onto Kinsta, it's automatically got Cloudflare Enterprise managed by Kinsta, operating to protect the site from DDoS attacks, but also to give it that extra performance boost. So you get edge caching, and there's even an image optimization option that you can turn on in the My Kinsta dashboard to just really make sure, again, that the site is very fast, very performant, as well as very secure. And then finally, there's a lot of tools and a lot of things I can dive into, and maybe we'll talk about them on this call. But really, one of the big things I want to highlight is our support team. So we have a 24/7 team of support engineers. And since we're a remote company, those engineers are located around the globe. And I think a really important thing that I like to point out to people is what that means is anytime you're contacting our support, the support engineer that you're talking to, it's their working hours. So it's just daytime for them. And so they're in a much better mood to help you instead of working some graveyard shift. So don't worry about contacting us at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. Somebody's going to be there to help you out and be happy to answer your questions. So that's kind of a quick overview of Kinsta, but I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Thank you so much. And I'm personally a big fan of WordPress, and I've been working with it for about 14 years already. And I wish we just had such a helping hand back then when we started working with WordPress. I'm sure that all our audience now is convinced that our today's talk will be really exciting and hot. And just before this podcast, I've just checked the latest statistics about the WordPress, just to make sure I'm not the only big fan out there of WordPress. And actually, the statistics proves that WordPress still holds the bar high, and it's still the most popular platform, CMS platform, and not only CMS platform, just all over the world, and it sounds really impressive because for so many years WordPress still sticks to high standards and is still popular among users all over the world. So my first question will be, what do you think makes WordPress such a go for a solution for businesses, especially when there are so many other CMS platforms appeared out there?
Yeah, so it's a great question. WordPress has always had kind of the status of being easy to use. And that's not only from the end user's perspective, but also from the developer's perspective. So I can remember way back when WordPress came out, 2003, I was playing with other CMS and blogging platforms really at that point. And with WordPress, the 5-minute install has been, the famous 5-minute install has always been there. And it was true all the way back then as it is true today. It really is easy to set up and get working very quickly. So I think that's one of the things that makes WordPress more used by a lot more people. The second thing, though, and potentially even bigger, is the community. So WordPress has a massive community around the world, and this has been built from a few different ways. So the first one is WordPress is open source software. So anybody in the world can go to wordpress.org and sign up for an account and start contributing to whether it's the actual code in core, or they can contribute by helping organize meetups and WordCamps where people can get together and exchange ideas of how they're using WordPress. So there's a lot of ways that the community can come together. And then over the years, WordPress has just really built a strong community by having a very welcoming community, and then also having a lot of in-person events where people can just meet each other and make friends, and you can look at somebody's laptop and they can show you exactly how to do something. And so that's really a big feature, I think, of why WordPress is so popular. And then, there's a lot of evolution has happened, as you kind of talked about, over the last even 14 years. We've seen a big evolution in the hosting that is provided. And Kinsta has played a big part of that in providing this managed hosting. And with WordPress, there is some complexity involved, right? You need to have a web server, whether that's Apache or Nginx. You need to have PHP installed, which needs to be upgraded regularly. You need to have MySQL database or MariaDB database installed, which again also needs to be updated and maintained. And so for a lot of users, that added just a ton more complexity that they weren't ready for. And that can lead to performance issues. It can lead to security issues. But now with managed hosting, all of that goes away. So one of the things I like to say at Kinsta is we've built a service so that you can stay focused on WordPress. We'll handle everything else, the web server, the database, the PHP engine. We handle updating those, keeping those secure. You can just stay focused on WordPress. And so I think those three things combining, the ease of use, the community, and then now the managed hosting, has really helped make WordPress be the most popular platform out there.
And actually, you almost answered one of my next questions. I just wanted to ask, there are so many hosting providers out there today, and how should someone pick up the right one for their WordPress site, and why does that choice really matter?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I'm a little bit biased, right? I work for Kinsta, a managed hosting company, but I've worked for other hosting companies, and I've had a pretty long career of working in hosting. And I think you have to take a couple things into consideration. So for a lot of people, money is a big consideration. It's hosting costs money. There's resources being used. You need to pay for that. And there's a lot of options. There are very inexpensive options for hosting. And, the one thing I would recommend people be cautious of is when you get that cheaper hosting, you may end up paying for it in different ways. And so what I was just talking about from a security and a performance standpoint, If you've got an out-of-date version of PHP, that can allow a hacker to access your site and either deface the site, start sending spam from it. All types of issues can occur. And then also with performance, if the host is not giving enough resources and really making sure that the site is performing well, you're going to have a slow website. And when users go to that site, if it's slow, I don't know about you, but if it takes more than a second for a site to load, I'm hitting the back button and I'm going somewhere else. So, you can save some money by going with an inexpensive host to start with. But time and time again, I've seen people end up spending even more money to fix issues that have occurred because of that inexpensive hosting. Whereas if they had just gone with a managed hosting from the beginning, they could have saved a lot of headache. So, a lot of things to consider there. I think Kinsta is the best, obviously, but there's a lot of good web hosting companies out there for sure.
And since you've mentioned site speed and performance, how does it affect things like conversion rates and user engagement? And does it really a big deal? Does it really matter so much?
Sure, absolutely. And I think all of us can relate to this. When you've got, whether it's a website or just some piece of software or your television, or even your oven, right? When you go to hit a button, you expect something to happen relatively immediately. And when there's a delay, you get frustrated pretty immediately. And so making sure that the site is performing very quickly and optimally is absolutely critical. And you don't have to take my word for it. And you've got your own experience, being frustrated in that. But we can also look at Google. So Google tells us through, there's the Lighthouse, and then there's Core Web Vitals. These are all tools that, Google is basically telling us what they're looking at when they're trying to figure out who they want to put at the top of the rankings. And what we need to keep in mind is that the data that they're showing us in those tools is only a little bit of the actual data they're using behind the scenes to calculate everything. And so it makes those data points that they do show us and they do tell us about that much more important, that we need to make sure we're absolutely nailing, a fast loading website, a responsive website. You need to have a site that is adjusting to different screen sizes. If I'm on my mobile phone and I go to your website and I get the desktop page, I'm not going to spend much time on that site. And so you want to make sure that the site's responsive and it adjusts to these different screen sizes. So speed and performance are really critical. And there's a few different ways that as a website owner and a WordPress site owner that you can take these into consideration. So the number one is having a good hosting provider. That really does solve a lot of the issues that you can run into. So you've got the web server I mentioned, PHP, MySQL, all of those work to speed up the website, especially the newer the versions. Then you've got, whether it's hosted in a top tier data center or not. So all Google Cloud data centers are top tier data centers, meaning they have multiple broadband connections for either, multiple providers. So if one provider goes down, there's another provider. They have multiple power sources. So if one of the power companies goes out, they have, either generator backups and whatnot. So these are all things that play a big role. Then outside of the hosting, when you're actually building your website, with a WordPress site, you've got the ability to easily add a theme. And this is where you can start getting into trouble, because it's so easy to start adding more and more features to the theme that can end up slowing down the site, because each time you add a feature, you're adding more code. So you want to be aware of that as you're working with the themes. But I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself here, so I'll take a break and let you ask some more questions.
Actually, when you start mentioning adding some features, and it's like about adding, maybe you meant adding some plugins and some additional tools. And I know that WordPress has a huge pool of plugins, maybe the hugest one of all similar CMS platforms. Actually, I've been working for Magento company for about 5 years. We've created so many plugins for Magento, and I remember, and we used Magento by ourselves, and I remember how does it feel when you add some additional plugins, and how it affects your site speed, your performance, and also your usability. And yes, regarding this, I also want to ask about, for example, how WordPress compare to platforms like, for example, Shopify, Magento, when it comes to flexibility and maybe business growth. And then maybe we will come to some questions about plugins.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you make a great point here. And I think, this is even the fourth reason of why WordPress is so popular is the plugins. And I'll save going into that in too much more detail. But because we allow people to create plugins so easily, you can expand how WordPress works however you need it to do. And you can even write your own plugin. So, but to answer your question, to be more focused here on Shopify and these other third-party services that are what I consider a closed service. So what I mean by that is you don't have access to any of the code that is operating a Shopify website. So there's some advantages to that, right? So first of all, Shopify has a team of full-time developers who are updating and maintaining that code, keeping it performant, and keeping it running really well. And so there are cases where it seems like Shopify makes a lot of sense. Again, it's like with inexpensive hosting. With Shopify, you can cut some corners. The shop is already set up. You just need to sign up for your account and start putting items into your site, and then start promoting the site. And so you can get working a lot quicker. The drawback is that you have almost no control over what Shopify decides if they're even going to host your site. If they have any types of issues with the hosting, because they operate the hosting, if they have any types of issues, you have zero recourse to move to a different host. You're stuck with Shopify. And again, with the code, since it's closed and it's only maintained by Shopify employees, if there's somebody who has a great idea for how to make Shopify better, unless they get a job at Shopify, they're never going to be able to influence that. And so you get a little bit more limited approach there. And so I urge people to be cautious. If you need to move quickly and just get something set up today, then I guess Shopify can work for you. But I also then question, how well are you planning out and strategizing your business if you have to move that quickly to just get everything set up? Using WordPress allows you to take a much larger view. So yes, you can add WooCommerce to have an e-commerce site on WordPress. If you want to have an event planning or an event managing site, there's a plugin you can add for that. So if you're using a Shopify site, you're kind of stuck. It's going to just be an e-commerce website. But with WordPress, you can expand beyond that if you need to. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, sure. And also talking about e-commerce websites and e-commerce features, what maybe some must-have tools, must-have plugins you suggest to try or to run for anyone looking to improve their WordPress website, e-commerce website?
Sure, absolutely. I think, it's kind of built into WooCommerce at this point is, using Stripe or some sort of a payment gateway, but really getting that figured out right away. And I think even on top of that, making sure you've got either Apple Pay or Google Pay built into that. Because I can tell you when I'm shopping on my phone and there's that Apple Pay button and I can just click it, and then I do the little double click on the side, and it's got not only my payment details, but it's got my shipping address. Like, that makes the experience so much easier. I'm so much more likely to actually make that purchase just because of that one change. So personally, and I think professionally, I really recommend focusing on that checkout process. Make that as easy as possible for people. Outside of that, I am going to draw a little bit of a blank on specific plugin names that you should be utilizing. But what I would recommend is as you're analyzing what you want your shop to achieve, there are so many solutions out there. I mentioned WooCommerce. There's also things like easy digital downloads. And these are a little bit more specific plugins. So if you're just selling a download, you can use easy digital downloads, and that'll make it really easy for that shopping experience. You can also use WooCommerce for those types of things. So there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of options. My recommendation to your audience is go do some research. Start, do a Google search, use ChatGPT, whatever you're using to search nowadays, and put in what you're trying to achieve. What are you trying to sell? Because I guarantee there's already somebody out there who's set up a website doing something very similar. And they've probably written a blog post about how they did it with WordPress and what plugins they used. So start looking at that. Go to Reddit. There's great conversations happening around WordPress on Reddit. You can post a question in there, and the more details you have, the better answers people are going to give you. Social media is a great place. So I really recommend going out and doing some investigation. I realize this is a little bit of a cop-out on your question, but I'm also trying not to play any favorites. Because I have a lot of partners who do a lot of these plugins, and they all do a great job. But it's really important that you find the plugin that fits what you're trying to achieve. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and one of our most popular integration for our affiliate platform, our affiliate tracking platform, is WordPress integration. And so we need to keep fingers on the pulse of what is happening in the world of WordPress. That's why everything regarding WordPress is really of huge interest for us. And just maybe you can tell us about some future projections of about how hosting platforms will improve and will develop in future, and it's maybe how its popularity will grow, and why it's more convenient, and why it's maybe more economically more convenient to apply for such platforms rather than to have in-house specialists in a company.
Yeah, no, so great question. Where's WordPress going? What are we getting excited about? So one thing that we just rolled out at Kinsta is automatic updates. And so what this is this is a tool to help you automate updating your plugins and your themes on WordPress. And so this has been a classic kind of frustration that users have with WordPress, is when you have each plugin is its own code based, and there's updates that are made to it. And usually there's security updates. There's a lot of features that are added too. But in the past, you needed to manually update each of these and make sure that they were compatible with the site and they didn't cause any problems. So what Kinsta has come out with to solve this is Kinsta automatic updates. So when you activate this, it is a paid add-on, but when you activate this, we automatically update your plugins and your themes. But before we make the update, we take a screenshot of different pages of your website. Currently, it's up to 5 different pages of your website. Then we make the update. Then we take a screenshot of the same pages. And if we notice any changes in the pages, we consider that an error, and we roll back the site to prior to that update. And so this does a couple of things. First of all, it should give you some peace of mind that these updates can happen, and if there is a problem, the site's going to keep running. Kinsta is going to notify you, hey, there was a problem with this plugin update. You're going to want to take a look at what happened. And then you can look at the screenshots that we took. You can create a staging environment and test the update and see if there's really a problem there or not. And you can also contact our support team about what happened and see if they can help you. We do have a limit on our scope of support, but we have a lot of partners. So if you need a developer to help you out with, we can set you up with somebody to work through these issues with you. So it's really an exciting tool. It solves a big problem for a lot of customers of WordPress in having these updates just automated for you. because you really have to treat all of these updates as security updates. And because there's no difference, we don't separate security updates from feature updates in WordPress yet at the plugin level. And so you need to treat each update as a security event. So it's just a really good idea to keep all these plugins updated, and it keeps the site running a lot faster. So that's one thing that we're really excited about. We're also excited, we just see a lot of updates keep happening with Google Cloud's infrastructure in general, and all of our DevOps engineers are experts with Google Cloud. So anytime that there's an update to the machines, we move all our customers' sites to those faster machines at no additional charge, because we just want you to have the fastest, most performant website available. So we're kind of excited about that. In a more of a general WordPress term, the AI, of course, is the term of the year. It was last year, and it continues to be. There's a lot of exciting things happening around AI. We're seeing people, with page builders and even form builders using AI to, create new forms, create pages, create entire websites. And I've got mixed reactions to this stuff. On the one hand, it's exciting because it speeds up our work a lot. It also can help us find new answers that we hadn't considered before. But on the other side is a lot of it's just not very good yet. And so I urge caution. I urge people to use these tools as part of their workflow, not the entire workflow. And with that, you're going to be able to speed up your work a little bit, but you still need to be the final one looking at your work, making sure that it's good, because at the end of the day, people are going to be buying from your site. And if people can't use your site, then they're not going to buy from you. So that's pretty exciting. Other things to think about. I think that is kind of the big stuff right now. We continue to improve our processes as a managed host. We're constantly working to find out ways to make the sites more performant, to make Nginx work better, to make Cloudflare work better. As Cloudflare keeps rolling out new features, we're always trying to integrate those and determine if that's going to be a good fit for our customers' websites.
Your reply was very, very, very informative, and I have two thoughts. First, that I looked at when you talked about different types of updates and other stuff, that you're just taking care of all this stuff. I remembered when I worked with for Magento plugin developer, it was our headache as a developer of plugins to inform users about compatibility and other stuff. We tested everything, and we updated all information about to which version of Magento our plugin is compatible to, and it was our headache when if user couldn't install our plugin properly, or it broke something on their website. Our support managers were involved into this process, and this way maybe you also help not only WordPress users but all plugin developers, just to make some work for them as well.
No, absolutely. You bring up a lot of great points there, and a lot of that comes to PHP compatibility usually, right? So
Yeah.
as new versions of PHP come out, the plugin developers need to update their tools, and they should anyway. It's going to work better on the newer versions. And so we take a very active role in updating PHP for our users. And then also we work with plugin developers too. So if there is some sort of a incompatibility, or there's an additional setting that needs to happen for a plugin, we're very open to talking with the plugin developers and figuring out, hey, is this something where the plugin developer, the plugin's customers just need to reach out to Kinsta support, say, hey, I'm trying to use this plugin, we need to do some X configuration. We're very open and receptive to those types of arrangements to make sure everything works really well. I think also you bring up a really good point here about WordPress again. So maybe the fifth reason that WordPress is so popular is its backward compatibility. And so this is a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, having backwards compatibility means that older versions of WordPress can still run and operate on the same hosting that newer versions are operating on. And so that's nice. It's very stable that way. The drawback, of course, is that it's not necessarily using the most cutting edge features. And so that can frustrate people as well. But I think it's a good balance. And it's also an explanation of why WordPress is so popular.
And also, when you were answering the previous question, you mentioned AI tools and AI plugins that pop up every day, new ones. And also, we are also running our own website on WordPress. It's not e-commerce, it's more like our visit card or something like that. But actually, I myself create a lot of landing pages for it, and we are thinking about using some AI tools to generate and populate our landing pages, because we're always a run of free hands, and we want to optimize our processes. But after you told about that, how it can affect site performance and maybe site speed and other stuff, I will be more cautious about this.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point there. So one of the tools that we have to kind of dive into Kinsta a little bit more is called the APM tool. So that's Application Performance Monitoring. And so this is a tool that you can turn on. You don't want it to run all the time because it uses up some resources. But what happens is that you turn it on, then you go use your website. So in your case, my recommendation would be to create a staging version of the website, create your new landing page, turn on the APM tool, and then test out that landing page while that tool is running. And then you'll be able to go back into the report from the tool, and it'll show you, how many database calls are happening, what kind of PHP functions are being used. And you'll be able to analyze, hey, is this optimized in any way? And you might be able to find ways to maybe remove some functions or some database calls to make things a little bit faster. And so the APM tool can play a great role in using something like AI to build something out, and then use the APM tool to actually test, hey, is what we built actually going to work from a performance perspective? And that can really help things out a lot.
And maybe my final question for today will be, what would you suggest to newcomers to WordPress, to people who just are going to start their business running a website on WordPress, eCommerce, or maybe some news website, or maybe they are considering migrating from other platforms like Wix, Shopify, WooCommerce, or other. What are the main maybe steps they should watch out for?
This is a really great question, and this can be a controversial answer. But honestly, I would recommend trying to find a WordPress expert, whether it's an individual, it's a freelancer, or an agency that has a number of developers and project managers, and they can do more than just the WordPress site. And have them kind of work with you to figure out exactly what you want to do. I realize that this kind of gets away from the idea of WordPress being a very do-it-yourself or DIY tool. And I'm not saying you can't do it yourself. What I would urge, though, is that unless you're really into computers and code and really tinkering around with software, that you can save yourself a lot of headaches, a lot of time, and a lot of money by engaging an expert who really does understand WordPress, and more specifically understands WordPress in the way that you want to use it. So if you're looking to do an e-commerce website, you should find somebody who's got a lot of experience doing WordPress e-commerce. If you're doing a brochure site and you're trying to get lead generation, you should talk to an expert who's an expert in WordPress lead generation websites, because they're going to have different tool sets that will work. And in some cases, it can be the same person or the same company. But I think, spending a little bit of time and money up front and getting a good foundation that then you can go and add the content to. I mean, that's the great thing is once WordPress is set up for you, you can log into the admin area and you can create content very easily. You can create landing pages very easily. And if you work with an expert developer to get all that set up and you tell them, hey, look, here's my goal. I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And when they deliver that to you, you now have a tool that you can use yourself. And, and if you've got it hosted at Kinsta, we're going to make sure that the site is going to be operating quickly and smoothly so that, again, you can just stay focused on adding content to the site.